Maxwell has now begun a concerted campaign to rewrite history. And in an audacious and strangely compelling interview from prison, she's making some extraordinary claims.
Silence can last for years, but it only takes one unexpected voice to shatter it completely. From behind prison walls, a name few believed would resurface has suddenly pushed its way back into the global spotlight. Ghislaine Maxwell is said to be talking, and the shockwaves are already rattling royal watchers across the world. Everywhere you look, conversations are buzzing. Whispers about private letters, off-the-record exchanges, and long-buried connections are reigniting fierce debate. Supporters and critics alike brace for what could come next, as unnamed sources quietly warn of consequences that no palace press office could fully contain. Is this a calculated tactic, a search for leverage, or just another thunderclap in the tabloid storm? And why does this moment feel particularly damaging for Meghan? What's being described as Maxwell's latest revelations unfolds like a suspense-heavy mystery thriller. The claims are dramatic, highly speculative, and tied once again to the long shadow of Jeffrey Epstein. According to this narrative, the truth wasn't lost. It was allegedly hidden in plain sight, locked away behind sealed files, redactions, and silence that stretched on for years. Behind closed courtrooms and restricted archives, sources claim audio recordings vanished, and documents were released only after heavy censorship. Even when Epstein-related materials finally surfaced publicly, critics argue they appeared stripped of their most revealing sections, leaving behind gaps so glaring they only deepened suspicion. Among the most talked-about omissions are claims involving up to 12 hours of interviews with Maxwell herself. Insiders allege these recordings contained deeply sensitive discussions that never reached public ears. And within those allegedly missing hours comes the most attention-grabbing claim of all, that Meghan Markle's name was mentioned outright. Instead of portraying Meghan's path into royal life as a simple story driven by ambition, talent, and romance, this account suggests something far more layered. According to people familiar with the interviews, Maxwell allegedly spoke about elite social environments where wealth and power flowed freely, and where introductions weren't accidental but carefully orchestrated. In this version of events, Meghan's name reportedly surfaced during conversations about those exclusive circles. The narrative goes even further, claiming Maxwell sometimes used coded language when referencing individuals, allegedly to soften implications or protect identities. Meghan, the account claims, was supposedly referred to by the nickname Flower, a term meant to signal grace, beauty, and an appearance of innocence within high-status spaces. Supporters of this theory argue the nickname fits a pattern Maxwell was said to use when describing women who moved comfortably through elite gatherings. Still, the passage repeatedly stresses that no direct, publicly available proof confirms any of this. The intrigue grows not from evidence, but from absence. The narrative then introduces Virginia Giuffre, one of the most widely known survivors connected to the Epstein case. According to the account, Giuffre at one point viewed Meghan as a possible witness in her legal action involving Prince Andrew. This belief is clearly presented as Giuffre's impression rather than established fact, yet the suggestion alone adds another layer of tension. If true, such testimony could have carried serious weight. The idea that someone on the edge of royal life may have held relevant knowledge feeds directly into questions that were never publicly answered. Again, no proof is offered, only implications that refuse to fade. The sudden settlement of Prince Andrew's lawsuit is also framed here as more than a routine legal choice. Rather than a simple effort to move on, it's portrayed as a decision that conveniently prevented further questioning and sworn testimony from high-profile figures. The implication, never proven, is that allowing the case to continue might have exposed connections powerful people preferred to keep buried. Throughout the passage, the tone stays carefully balanced between caution and provocation. The claims are labelled explosive but unverified, built largely on anonymous sources, missing recordings, and heavily edited documents. The lack of complete evidence isn't presented as guilt, it's presented as fertile ground for speculation. Every redaction, every sealed transcript, every missing audio clip becomes another reason, at least for believers, to suspect the full story was never meant to be told. The passage avoids firm conclusions, instead leaving the reader with unresolved questions and a lingering sense of unfinished business. By emphasizing secrecy, alleged omissions, and testimony that never happened, the story suggests certain connections were never fully explored in public view. Whether these hints point to deeper truths or are simply rumor amplified by silence remains unclear, but the mystery alone keeps attention locked in. The bigger issue goes beyond any single name. How much influence can wealth, power, and status exert over justice and transparency? And how quickly can speculation spiral when official records remain incomplete? So how does Maxwell allegedly connect Meghan to all of this? Where could their paths have crossed? The narrative shifts toward what some describe as Sarah Ferguson's quiet gatekeeping within royal social webs. To understand that claim, the story rewinds the tape, peeling back layers that allegedly formed long before tiaras, palace balconies, or royal wedding bells ever appeared. Picture the year 2000. Jeffrey Epstein had not yet become a symbol of scandal and global outrage. At the time, he was viewed as polished, well-connected, and quietly powerful, a man who moved effortlessly through rooms reserved for society's most protected circles. According to insiders, Prince Andrew himself opened those doors. Epstein was reportedly invited into the royal box at Ascot, one of the most exclusive spaces in British high society. This wasn't just about status, it was about trust and acceptance. Around him, familiar faces gathered. Ghislaine Maxwell worked the crowd with ease, while Sarah Ferguson lingered nearby, still influential despite her divorce from Andrew. Epstein didn't stand out. He blended in, like someone who already belonged. This period marked the height of the Andrew-Epstein friendship. The two reportedly travelled together, dined together, and attended private gatherings far from public scrutiny. These were not casual meetups, but tightly controlled environments where discretion mattered as much as rank. Though no longer Andrew's wife, Fergie allegedly remained a central figure in these social spaces. Insiders describe her as a skilled networker, someone who knew exactly who should be introduced and who should never cross paths at all. Invitations, introductions, and quiet exclusions were said to pass through her influence. That's why eyebrows rose years later when Fergie publicly claimed she had never met Meghan until after Meghan began dating Prince Harry. Among those familiar with the old social circuit, disbelief followed fast. They argued that if Meghan had ever drifted close to the Epstein-Maxwell-Andrew orbit in earlier years, Fergie would have noticed immediately. Nothing, they say, escaped her awareness. This is where the narrative shifts from fairy tale to controlled drama. Some insiders claim Meghan was not a total outsider stepping suddenly into royal life. Instead, she was already hovering at the edges, known but unseen, present but not publicly acknowledged. According to this telling, Fergie allegedly recognized potential risks early. One source described it bluntly: Fergie acted as a shield, not loudly, not aggressively, but through subtle social maneuvering. She redirected conversations, managed introductions, and quietly ensured that no meaningful connection formed between Meghan and Prince Andrew. It was, according to this account, a form of social body blocking designed to prevent even the slightest possibility of scandal. If Ghislaine Maxwell's later claims about recruitment and grooming held even a hint of truth, then Sarah Ferguson's instincts may have been firing on all cylinders, urging her to keep careful boundaries in place. Yet Meghan was never completely blocked. She continued moving through London's elite spaces, private members' clubs, exclusive parties, and high-profile charity events where wealth, influence, and ambition mixed like electricity in the air. She lingered close enough to the corridors of power to feel their pull, yet just far enough to avoid full scrutiny. The question that keeps echoing: did Fergie's awareness of Meghan stretch farther back than publicly admitted? How long had Meghan been brushing against royal life before the world noticed? If the timeline begins before the polished 2016 love story, her rise was far from accidental. It may have been the result of years spent navigating the same glittering but treacherous social corridors that once welcomed Epstein and Maxwell. Seen through this lens, Meghan's path shifts shape. It becomes less about luck or romance and more about careful positioning, patience, and survival in spaces loaded with both opportunity and danger. At the centre of it all stands Fergie, the quiet gatekeeper, prompting endless questions. How much does she know, and how many secrets is she still keeping? How could someone with such a past rise into the royal cadre? Did she attempt to erase traces of it? Let's dig into the details of Meghan's meteoric ascent. From hidden clubs to the global stage, in April 2015, Prince Harry attended the grand opening of a Soho house in Istanbul, an event dripping with wealth, influence, and even a hint of royalty. Among the carefully curated guests was Meghan, whose presence insiders now suggest was pivotal to her trajectory. Unlike ordinary parties, Soho House gatherings were meticulously engineered. Guest lists, seating, timing, and introductions were all calculated to maximize connections and opportunities. CEOs, celebrities, politicians, and even Prince Charles mingled strategically, crafting an environment where each interaction could shape futures. Observers claim Meghan's meeting with Harry wasn't some chance encounter. It was an orchestrated moment that marked the real launch of her global prominence, setting the stage for her eventual royal ascent. By this point, Meghan was no stranger to the Soho ecosystem. Her network stretched deep. Stylists, photographers, influencers, producers, and well-travelled friends moved fluidly between London, New York, Toronto, and Europe. Soho House wasn't just a club, it was a high-speed social accelerator. A single, well-timed conversation could unlock doors that had seemed permanently sealed to outsiders. After Istanbul, insiders noticed a striking shift. Meghan's public image appeared to transform almost overnight. She became more visible in humanitarian spaces, invitations to elite circles multiplied, and her proximity to powerful people sharpened dramatically. Observers from the sidelines noted that the transition seemed unusually smooth, too smooth to be mere coincidence. One industry insider later joked, "She didn't stumble into that world. She was guided straight through the front door." This raises questions, still whispered today. Who orchestrated that Istanbul introduction? Who decided which faces would be in the room at that exact moment? And why do some of the same philanthropic and social networks keep appearing in stories connected to powerful and controversial figures? Some observers rewind even further to New York, 2013. Where Meghan was allegedly already moving through elite private gatherings. These weren't casual meetups or auditions. They were invitation-only salons where media executives, political operatives, wealthy donors, and prominent activists exchanged influence and ideas. At the time, figures like Harvey Weinstein still dominated these spaces. Attendees weren't passing through. They were building networks and relationships that could define careers. Then came 2014. Another eyebrow-raising moment. Meghan appeared at a public Q&A in Ukraine, associated with groups linked to Clinton-aligned organizations. This was long before Suits had reached peak visibility, and years before she publicly crossed paths with Prince Harry. Early access to these circles suggested either remarkable ambition or curiosity, or both. The intrigue deepened as Maxwell resurfaced publicly, and her claims were brought into renewed discussion. According to these accounts, Epstein's money flowed into major global humanitarian efforts, including initiatives connected to the Clintons. While these claims remain unverified, their very existence fuels speculation. If questionable funds moved through respected philanthropic channels, could influence, introductions, and access have travelled alongside it? Seen against this backdrop, Meghan's swift entry into elite humanitarian and political spaces after Istanbul starts to appear less surprising to some insiders. Doors that rarely opened seemed to swing wide. Invitations multiplied, platforms expanded, and her proximity to Prince Harry soon followed, reinforcing the idea that the groundwork for her ascent was laid long before the world witnessed her public love story. None of this proves a hidden hand was guiding her path, but for those familiar with elite social networks, the pattern feels familiar. Power rarely moves at random. It flows through relationships, recommendations, and carefully curated access. Viewed from this lens, Meghan's rise looks less like sudden luck and more like a timed entry into a system that rewards preparation. The lingering question remains, Who opened the doors, and who decided it was her time to step through them? How has she navigated life without being haunted by the past? Could there have been protection shielding her behind the scenes? As Meghan entered royal life, her public persona appeared polished, confident, and untouchable. While the world saw effortless success, palace insiders whispered of unseen forces quietly supporting her. Even when her acting career slowed, she never seemed lost or vulnerable, as if some quiet protection ensured her trajectory remained steady. Some observers suggest this support predated her royal marriage. Rumours circulating within elite and legal circles hint at unresolved questions linked to the Maxwell case, especially the redacted and sealed details. This isn't about shielding Meghan directly. It's about influential figures allegedly guiding her early path, who themselves may have had reason to remain protected. Insiders speculate that if she were ever compelled to testify, Meghan could reveal names far beyond her public resume. These unverified theories help explain her rapid rise into royal circles, her global humanitarian image, and the surprising allies who defend her among elite watchers. She is portrayed as someone who knows too much, someone whose silence holds real power. This silent influence carries risk within the royal family. Allegedly, Prince William, as a guardian of the monarchy's future, felt the weight of that risk acutely. Sources say he was deeply cautious about any move that might reopen old wounds or spark fresh scandals. Long before disagreements spilled publicly, he allegedly opposed any return of Harry and Meghan to the fold, not out of personal dislike, but out of concern that revisiting certain connections could invite questions better left unanswered. One often cited story illustrates this perfectly. At Balmoral, Prince Andrew reportedly sought a visible role at a church event. William is said to have drawn a hard line, offering a blunt choice: Andrew's presence or his own. Andrew withdrew. Observers stress this wasn't about pride or rivalry. It was about protecting the crown from even indirect links to the Epstein-Maxwell world, however distant or unproven. Seen through this lens, the royal family's cautious maneuvers begin to make strategic sense. William's ongoing criticism in the press takes on a deeper significance when seen through the prism of palace strategy and legacy preservation. Supporters argue that his actions are not fueled by petty family drama, personal pride, or sibling rivalry. They're rooted in something far more consequential: a firm, unwavering refusal to reintroduce figures historically tied to controversy and risk. From this perspective, William isn't guarding his ego. He is defending the long-term survival of the institution he is destined to lead, the monarchy itself. Every word in public, every decision behind closed doors, is a calculated move to shield the crown from anything that could spark scandal or destabilize the royal family. And then comes the most intriguing piece of the puzzle, the detail that binds all these threads together. It does not occur in a courtroom or unfold within the walls of Buckingham Palace. It happens on a luxury yacht, drifting across impossibly blue waters, years before Meghan Markle's name would ever make headlines worldwide. People from old social circles described this yacht as a strange crossroads, a floating microcosm where the wealthy, influential, and ambitious mingled freely. Deals were discussed in whispers, futures quietly reshaped, and entire lives could be redirected over the course of a single evening. Whether Meghan was invited deliberately, placed there as part of a design, or arrived by chance remains uncertain. What is clear, according to multiple sources, is that the yacht was not the end of a journey. It was the beginning of a path that would eventually bring her face to face with a prince who may have never fully seen the forces moving behind the scenes. From that night forward, her trajectory allegedly widened to include exclusive New York gatherings, shadowy London networks, opulent events in Istanbul, and ultimately into the orbit of the royal family. At the centre of all this speculation are the mysterious 12 hours linked to Maxwell. Hours said to contain names, dates, and connections that could map Meghan's rise from anonymity to prominence. These details, if they exist, are not framed as evidence of wrongdoing, but rather as pieces of a carefully orchestrated system designed to lift and protect certain individuals until the world was ready, or perhaps until secrets became too dangerous to ignore. The story hangs unresolved, like the opening chapter of a thriller, leaving the reader suspended, breathless, and guessing. It is not an ending, it is a spark, a signal that the real beginning of this story remains hidden, waiting to be uncovered slowly, piece by piece, layer by layer. Why is Maxwell speaking now? What prompted her to break decades of silence? And how deep was her involvement in the complex web of criminal cases that eventually made headlines worldwide? To understand, we must rewind even further to the forgotten investigations that predated the Epstein scandal. Years before Epstein became a household name synonymous with wealth, privilege, and criminality, a quieter, largely unnoticed investigation was already unfolding in Palm Beach. In 2001, local police began examining disturbing reports connected not directly to Epstein, but to his close associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. College students from a nearby campus reported being approached with unusually lucrative job offers, jobs that required them to work at Epstein's residence, according to later released U.S. Department of Justice reports. Maxwell allegedly recruited young women for what were described as administrative roles, answering phones, managing paperwork, and performing other simple office tasks. The pay, around $200 per day, stood out as unusually high for such menial work. Police, however, noted that the interior of the residence was private, closed off, and difficult to monitor. What actually occurred inside remained opaque, adding a layer of unease to what should have been straightforward employment opportunities. Several students recalled phone calls with an English woman identifying herself as Maxwell. She specifically requested young, unmarried, attractive women. Some described these interactions as peculiar, noting that arrangements were coordinated in ways that felt more like scheduled appointments than standard employment. Others reported discomfort at the vague explanations they received, observing that Epstein and Maxwell intentionally avoided giving full details about the work. At least 2 students went further, alleging that Epstein had touched them in ways that left them feeling violated. These reports did not immediately result in criminal charges, but painted a troubling portrait of blurred boundaries and inappropriate behaviour. Maxwell, according to witnesses, seemed intent on maintaining a ready list of girls who could be called in at short notice, a practice officers found unusual, especially for what was supposedly administrative work. The investigation faced significant obstacles. Some students became hard to reach, follow-up interviews proved challenging, and police were limited in what they could observe directly. Still, officers persisted, searching through discarded materials from Epstein's residence. Among the items found were massage advertisements, handwritten lists detailing women's ages and physical descriptions, and records tied to both Epstein and Maxwell. Individually, none of these items proved criminal activity, but together they suggested a deeply concerning pattern. Witnesses also described unusual scenes, topless women near the pool and frequent massages, but stressed that they had not directly observed anything that could be prosecuted. The boundary between what felt wrong and what could legally be proven remained frustratingly thin. In April 2002, after months of inquiry, Palm Beach police closed the case, concluding bluntly that they had not detected a crime chargeable at the time. For years, this investigation faded from public memory, largely forgotten. That silence abruptly ended in 2005 when a far more serious allegation surfaced, this time involving a 14-year-old girl. The claim reopened old questions, igniting broader investigations that would eventually draw national attention. What followed exposed a trail of missed opportunities, missteps, and highly controversial decisions. In 2007, Epstein reached a highly criticized non-prosecution agreement that allowed him to avoid federal charges and serve just 13 months in jail, a sentence many described later as shockingly lenient. In 2019, federal prosecutors indicted him again, but his death in custody prevented the case from reaching trial. Maxwell, however, would face a different fate. Arrested in 2020, she was tried and convicted in 2021 on multiple trafficking-related charges and is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence. Looking back, the 2001 Palm Beach investigation now reads less like a dead-end inquiry and more like the opening chapter of a much larger, disturbing story. A story that would ultimately have consequences echoing through the world of royalty, high society, and beyond. So, what do you think about Maxwell's sudden revelations? Can Meghan truly emerge from this unscathed? Are there layers of hidden influence, protection, or orchestration that the public will never fully know? We want to hear your thoughts. Share your theories in the comments, and let us know what you think might be the untold chapters of this story. And if you want to keep following these royal revelations, scandals, and the deep shadowed corridors of power, make sure you like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe, because there's more to uncover, and you won't want to miss a single piece of this unfolding mystery.